Hello friends, welcome back my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the super hit movie 300 in full HD, then first of all, give this video a like. And if you are visiting our channel for the first time, then subscribe to this channel. The name of the movie we are going to discuss in today's video is 300. So we will give you information about how and where you will get to watch 300 film officially. Apart from this, we will give you a detailed look at the pre-production, post-production, budget, box office collection, and filming of this movie. A detailed review of the movie will also be given in this video, where we will explain the story of this movie in detail. We will also discuss the cast and casting performance of the movie. Apart from this, information about the music department and technical department will also be given. Because of this video is going to be very interesting and entertaining. So, you must watch this video till the end. And if you haven't liked this video yet, then like this video now and subscribe to this channel. So let's start the video. 300 is a 2006 American epic historical action film directed by Zack Snyder, who co-wrote the screenplay with Johnstad and Michael B. Gordon. It is based on the 1998 Dark Horse comic book limited series of the same name by Frank Miller and Lynn Varley. The film, like its source material, is a fictionalized retelling of the Battle of Thermopylae in the Greco-Persian Wars. The plot revolves around King Leonidas, Gerard Butler, who leads 300 Spartans into battle against the Persian god king Xerxes, Rodrigo Santoro, and his invading army of more than 300,000 soldiers. As the battle rages, Queen Gorgo, Lena Headey, attempts to rally support in Sparta for her husband. The film also features Michael Fassbender in his film debut. The story is framed by a voiceover narrative by the Spartan soldier Dilios, David Wenham. Through this narrative technique, various fantastical creatures are introduced, placing 300 within the genre of historical fantasy. 300 was filmed mostly with a superimposition chroma key technique to replicate the imagery of the original comics. An unfinished cut of 300 premiered at the Austin Butt Numathon on December 9, 2006. The completed film then premiered at the Berlin International Film Festival on February 14, 2007, before being released in both conventional and IMAX screens in the United States on March 9th and on home media on July 31st. The film received mixed reviews from critics, who praised its visuals and style but criticized its historical inaccuracies, most notably its depiction of the Persians, which some characterized as Persophobic. Grossing over $456 million, the film's opening was the 24th largest in box office history at the time and became the 10th highest grossing film of 2007. The film earned a leading 10 nominations at the 34th Saturn Awards, winning 2 for Best Action, Adventure, or Thriller Film and Best Director for Snyder. A sequel, titled Rise of an Empire, based on Miller's previously unpublished graphic novel prequel Xerxes, was released on March 7, 2014. Plot: Dilios, a hoplite in the Spartan army, narrates the story of a Spartan king named Leonidas I from childhood to kingship through the Spartan child rearing system and the Battle of Thermopylae. A Persian herald arrives at Sparta demanding earth and water as a token of submission to King Xerxes. He urges Leonidas to submit and insults Queen Gorgo. In response, Leonidas and the Spartan soldiers throw the herald and his envoy into a bottomless pit. Leonidas then visits the ephors, proposing a strategy to drive back the Persians through Thermopylae to funnel the Persians into a narrow pass, giving the Greeks' heavy infantry the advantage over the numerically superior Persian light infantry. The ephors warn Leonidas that the Carnea is approaching and that Sparta should not wage war during that time. They consult the oracle, who decrees that Sparta should honor the Carnea. As Leonidas angrily departs, an agent from Xerxes appears alongside a Spartan politician, Theron, rewarding the ephors for their covert support. Although the ephors have denied him permission to mobilize Sparta's army, Leonidas gathers 300 soldiers. Theron and the council confront Leonidas about defying the ephors by going to war. Leonidas suggests they will not go, but they do depart for war shortly after that. They are joined by a few thousand Arcadians and other Greeks led by Daxos. They reach Thermopylae, watching a storm sinking many Persian navy ships at the Aegean Sea. The Spartans then scout out a large Persian encampment and construct a wall using slain Persian scouts as mortar. Meanwhile, Leonidas encounters Ephialtes, a deformed Spartan whose parents fled Sparta to spare him certain infanticide. Ephialtes asks to join Leonidas' army and warns him of a secret goat path the Persians could use to outflank and surround the Spartans. Although sympathetic, Leonidas rejects him since his deformity could compromise the phalanx formation. The battle begins soon after the Spartans' refusal to lay down their weapons. Because of the narrowed pathway, the Spartans repel many waves of the advancing Persian army. Xerxes personally approaches Leonidas and offers him immense wealth and power in exchange for his submission. Leonidas declines and mocks the inferior quality of Xerxes' warriors. Xerxes sends in his elite guard, the Immortals, accompanied by the monstrous Uber-Immortal, but the Greeks are once again victorious. On the second day, Xerxes sends in new waves of armies, including war elephants and an armored rhinoceros, with no success. Meanwhile, an embittered Ephialtes has defected to Xerxes and reveals the secret path in exchange for wealth, women, and a uniform. The Arcadians retreat upon learning of Ephialtes' betrayal, but the Spartans choose to stay. Leonidas orders an injured but reluctant Dilios to return to Sparta and inform his compatriots of what has happened. In Sparta, Queen Gorgo attempted to persuade the Spartan council to reinforce the 300 Spartan soldiers making their last stand. Gorgo comes to Theron for help, having been allowed to make her plea to the council, but Theron rapes her in exchange for his needed assistance, and the next day betrays her and attempts to defame her as an adulteress before the council. Gorgo kills Theron, revealing a bag of Xerxes' gold in his robe. Acknowledging his betrayal, the council unanimously agrees to send reinforcements. On the third day, the Persians, led by Ephialtes, traverse the secret path, encircling the Spartans. Xerxes' general again demands their surrender, but the Spartans refuse, and Stelios kills the general. Angered, Xerxes orders his troops to attack. Leonidas throws his spear at Xerxes, slicing his face to prove the god-king's mortality. Leonidas and the remaining Spartans fight to the last man until they finally succumb to an arrow barrage. Dilios concludes his tale before the Spartan council. Inspired by Leonidas' sacrifice, the Greeks mobilize an army, with Sparta leading the charge. Dilios, now head of the Spartan-led Greek army, gives a rousing emotional speech in tribute to King Leonidas and the 300 who sacrificed their lives a year prior. He then leads the Spartan-led Greek army into the Battle of Plataea against the Persians. Cast Gerard Butler as Leonidas, King of Sparta. David Wenham as Dilios, narrator and Spartan soldier. Lena Headey as Queen Gorgo, Queen of Sparta. Giovanni Cimino as Pleistarchus, son of Leonidas and Gorgo. Dominic West as Theron, a fictional corrupt Spartan politician. Vincent Regan as Captain Artemis, Leonidas' loyal captain and friend. Tom Wisdom as Astinos, Captain Artemis' eldest son. Andrew Pleven as Daxos, an Arcadian leader who joins forces with Leonidas. Andrew Tiernan as Ephialtes, a deformed Spartan outcast and traitor. Rodrigo Santoro as King Xerxes, the powerful and ruthless godlike king of Persia. Stephen McHattie as the Loyalist, a loyal Spartan politician. Michael Fassbender as Stelios, a young, spirited, and highly skilled Spartan soldier. Peter Mensa as a Persian messenger who gets kicked into the well by Leonidas. Kelly Craig as Pythia, an oracle to the Ephors. Eli Snyder as young Leonidas, 7/8 years old. Tyler Neitzel as young Leonidas, 15 years old. Robert Mela as Uber Immortal, Giant, a muscular and deranged immortal who battles Leonidas during the immortal fight. Patrick Sabongi as the Persian general who tries to convince Leonidas to comply at the end of the battle. Leon Laderac as Executioner, a hulking clawed man who executes Xerxes' own men. Tyrone Benskin as the whip-wielding Persian emissary. Production. Development producer Gianni Nunnari was not the only person planning a film about the Battle of Thermopylae, as director Michael Mann had already planned a film of the battle based on the book Gates of Fire. Nunnari discovered Frank Miller's graphic novel 300, which impressed him enough to acquire the film rights. 300 was jointly produced by Nunnari and Mark Canton, while Michael B. Gordon wrote the script. Director Zack Snyder was hired in June 2004 as he had attempted to make a film based on Miller's novel before making his debut with the remake of Dawn of the Dead. Snyder then had screenwriter Kurt Johnstad rewrite Gordon's script for production, and Frank Miller was retained as consultant and executive producer. Frank Miller's original graphic novel 300 was inspired by the film The 300 Spartans, which Miller first saw at age 6. The film is a shot-for-shot adaptation of the comic book, similar to the 2005 film adaptation of Sin City. Snyder photocopied panels from the comic book, from which he planned the preceding and succeeding shots. "It was a fun process for me, to have a frame as a goal to get to," he said. Like the comic book, the adaptation also used the character Dilius as a narrator. Snyder used this narrative technique to show the audience that the surreal Frank Miller world of 300 was told from a subjective perspective. By using Dilius's gift of storytelling, he was able to introduce fantasy elements into the film, explaining that Dilius is a guy who knows how not to wreck a good story with truth. Snyder also added the subplot in which Queen Gorgo attempts to rally support for Leonidas. 2 months of pre-production were required to create hundreds of shields, spears, and swords, some of which were recycled from Troy and Alexander. Creatures were designed by Jordu Shell, and an animatronic wolf and 13 animatronic horses were created. The actors trained alongside the stuntmen, and even Snyder joined in. Upwards of 600 costumes were created for the film, as well as extensive prosthetics for various characters and the corpses of Persian soldiers. Sean Smith and Mark Rappaport worked hand-in-hand with Snyder in pre-production to design the look of the individual characters and to produce the prosthetic makeup effects, props, weapons, and dummy bodies required for the production. Filming. 300 entered active production on October 17, 2005, in Montreal, and was shot over the course of 60 days in chronological order with a budget of $60 million. Employing the digital backlot technique, Snyder shot at the now-defunct Ice Storm Studios in Montreal using blue screens. Gerard Butler said that while he did not feel constrained by Snyder's direction, fidelity to the comic imposed certain limitations on his performance. David Wenham said there were times when Snyder wanted to precisely capture iconic moments from the comic book, and other times when he gave actors freedom to explore within the world and the confines that had been set. Lena Headey said of her experience with the blue screens, "It's very odd, and emotionally, there's nothing to connect to apart from another actor. Only one scene, in which horses travel across the countryside, was shot outdoors." The film was an intensely physical production, and Butler pulled an arm tendon and developed foot drop. Post-production. Post-production was handled by Montreal's Meteor Studios, and Hybrid Technologies filled in the blue screen footage with more than 1,500 visual effects shots. Visual effects supervisor Chris Watts and production designer Jim Bissell created a process dubbed the Crush, which allowed the Meteor artists to manipulate the colors by increasing the contrast of light and dark. Certain sequences were desaturated and tinted to establish different moods. Ghislain St. Pierre, who led the team of artists, described the effect. "Everything looks realistic, but it has a kind of a gritty, illustrative feel." Various computer programs, including Maya, RenderMan, and RealFlow, were used to create the spraying blood. The post-production lasted for a year and was handled by a total of 10 special effects companies. Music. Main article, 300 Original Motion Picture Soundtrack. In July 2005, composer Tyler Bates began work on the film, describing the score as having beautiful themes on the top and large choir, but tempered with some extreme heaviness. The composer had scored for a test scene that the director wanted to show to Warner Bros. To illustrate the path of the project. Bates said that the score had a lot of weight and intensity in the low end of the percussion, that Snyder found agreeable to the film. The score was recorded at Abbey Road Studios and features the vocals of Azam Ali. A standard edition and a special edition of the soundtrack containing 25 tracks was released on March 6, 2007, with the special edition containing a 16-page booklet and 3 two-sided trading cards. The score has caused some controversy in the film composer community, garnering criticism for its striking similarity to several other recent soundtracks, including James Horner and Gabriel Yared's work for the film Troy. The heaviest borrowings are said to be from Elliot Goldenthal's 1999 score for Titus. Remember Us from 300 is identical in parts to the finale from Titus, and Returns a King is similar to the cue Victorious Titus. On August 3, 2007, Warner Bros. Pictures acknowledged in an official statement, "A number of the music cues for the score of 300 were, without our knowledge or participation, derived from music composed by Academy Award-winning composer Elliot Goldenthal for the motion picture Titus." Warner Bros. Pictures has great respect for Elliot, our longtime collaborator, and is pleased to have amicably resolved this matter. Marketing. Main article 300, March to Glory. The official 300 website was launched by Warner Bros. In December 2005. The conceptual art and Zack Snyder's production blog were the initial attractions of the site. Later, the website added video journals describing production details, including comic-to-screen shots and the creatures of 300. In January 2007, the studio launched a MySpace page for the film. The Art Institutes created a microsite to promote the film. At San Diego Comic-Con in July 2006, the 300 panel aired a promotional teaser trailer of the film, which was positively received. Despite stringent security, the trailer was subsequently leaked on the internet. Warner Bros. Released the official trailer for 300 on October 4, 2006, and later on it made its debut on Apple.com, where it received considerable exposure. The background music used in the trailers was Just Like You Imagined by 9 Inch Nails. A second 300 trailer, which was attached to Apocalypto, was released in theaters on December 8, 2006, and online the day before. On January 22, 2007, an exclusive trailer for the film was broadcast during primetime television. The trailers have been credited with igniting interest in the film and contributing to its box office success. In April 2006, Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment announced its intention to make a PlayStation portable game, 300, March to Glory, based on the film. Collision Studios worked with Warner Bros. To capture the style of the film in the video game, which was released simultaneously with the film in the United States. The National Entertainment Collectibles Association produced a series of action figures based on the film, as well as replicas of weapons and armor. Warner Bros. Promoted 300 by sponsoring the Ultimate Fighting Championship's light heavyweight champion, Chuck Liddell, who made personal appearances and participated in other promotional activities, 48. The studio also joined with the National Hockey League to produce a 30-second TV spot promoting the film in tandem with the Stanley Cup playoffs. Release. Theatrical. In August 2006, Warner Bros. Announced 300's release date as March 16, 2007, but in October the release was moved forward to March 9, 2007. An unfinished cut of 300 was shown at Butt-Numb-A-Thon Film Festival on December 9, 2006. Home media. 300 was released on DVD, Blu-ray disc, and HD DVD on July 31, 2007, in Region 1 territories, in both single-disc and two-disc editions. 300 was released in single-disc and Steelcase 2-disc editions on DVD, BD, and HD DVD in Region 2 territories beginning August 2007. On July 21, 2009, Warner Bros. Released a new Blu-ray disc entitled 300, The Complete Experience, to coincide with the Blu-ray disc release of Watchmen. This new Blu-ray disc is encased in a 40-page digibook and includes all the extras from the original release as well as some new ones. These features include a picture-in-picture feature entitled The Complete 300, a comprehensive immersion which enables the viewer to view the film in 3 different perspectives. This release also includes a digital copy. An Ultra HD Blu-ray edition of the film was released on October 6, 2020. On July 9, 2007, American cable channel TNT bought the rights to broadcast the film from Warner Bros. TNT started airing the film in September 2009. Sources say that the network paid between $17 million and just under $20 million for the broadcasting rights. TNT agreed to a 3-year deal instead of the more typical 5-year deal. Reception. Box office. 300 was released in North America on March 9, 2007, in both conventional and IMAX theaters. It grossed $28,106,731 on its opening day and ended its North American opening weekend with $70,885,301, breaking the record held by Ice Age, The Meltdown, for the biggest opening weekend in the month of March and for a spring release. Since then, 300's spring release record was broken by Fast and Furious, and 300's March record was broken by Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. 300's opening weekend gross is the 24th highest in box office history, coming slightly below The Lost World, Jurassic Park, but higher than Transformers. It was the third biggest opening for an R-rated film ever, behind The Matrix Reloaded, $91.8 million, and The Passion of the Christ, $83.8 million. The film also set a record for IMAX cinemas with a $3.6 million opening weekend. The film grossed $456,068 worldwide. 300 opened 2 days earlier, on March 7, 2007, in Sparta, and across Greece on March 8th. Studio executives were surprised by the showing, which was twice what they had expected. They credited the film's stylized violence, the strong female role of Queen Gorgo, which attracted a large number of women, and a MySpace advertising blitz. Producer Mark Canton said, "MySpace had an enormous impact, but it has transcended the limitations of the internet or the graphic novel. Once you make a great movie, word can spread very quickly." Critical response. The film received a standing ovation at its world premiere in front of 1,700 audience members at the Berlin International Film Festival on February 14, 2007. It had been panned at a press screening hours earlier, where many attendees left during the showing, and those who remained booed at the end. As of July 2024, on Rotten Tomatoes, the film had an approval rating of 61% based on 238 reviews, with an average rating of 6.10/10. The site's critical consensus reads, "A simple-minded but visually exciting experience, full of blood, violence, and ready-made movie quotes." As of October 2020, on Metacritic, the film had a weighted average score of 52 out of 100, based on 42 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale. Some of the most unfavorable reviews came from major American newspapers. A. O. Scott of the New York Times described 300 as about as violent as Apocalypto and twice as stupid, and he also criticized its color scheme and suggested that its plot includes racist undertones. Scott also poked fun at the buffed bodies of the actors who portrayed the Spartans, declaring that the Persian characters are pioneers in the art of face piercing, and declaring that the actors who played the Spartans had access to superior health clubs and electrolysis facilities. Kenneth Turin wrote in the Los Angeles Times that, "Unless you love violence as much as a Spartan, Quentin Tarantino, or a video game-playing teenage boy, you will not be endlessly fascinated." Roger Ebert gave the film a 2 out of 4 rating, writing that 300 has one-dimensional caricatures who talk like professional wrestlers plugging their next feud. Some critics employed at Greek newspapers have been particularly critical, such as film critic Robbie Exiel, who said that moviegoers would be dazzled by the digital action, but also feel irritated by the pompous interpretations and one-dimensional characters. Variety's Todd McCarthy described the film as visually arresting, although bombastic, while Kirk Honeycutt, writing in The Hollywood Reporter, praised the beauty of its topography, colors, and forms. Writing in the Chicago Sun-Times, Richard Roper acclaimed 300 as the Citizen Kane of cinematic graphic novels. Empire gave the film 3 out of 5, writing, "Visually stunning, thoroughly belligerent, and as shallow as a pygmy's paddling pool, this is a whole heap of style tinged with just a smidgen of substance." Comic Book Resources' Mark Cronin found the film compelling, leaving him with a feeling of power from having been witness to something grand. IGN's Todd Gilchrist acclaimed Zack Snyder as a cinematic visionary and a possible redeemer of modern movie-making. Accolades. At the 2007 MTV Movie Awards, 300 was nominated for Best Movie, Best Performance for Gerard Butler, Best Breakthrough Performance for Lena Headey, Best Villain for Rodrigo Santoro, and Best Fight for Leonidas battling the Uber Immortal, but only won the award for Best Fight. 300 won both the Best Dramatic Film and Best Action Film honors in the 2006-2007 Golden Icon Awards presented by Travolta Family Entertainment. In December 2007, 300 won IGN's Movie of the Year 2007, along with Best Comic Book Adaptation and King Leonidas as favorite character. The movie received 10 nominations for the 2008 Saturn Awards, winning the awards for Best Director and Best Action Adventure Thriller Film. In 2009, National Review magazine ranked 300 number 5 on its 25 Best Conservative Movies of the Last 25 Years list. Historical accuracy. In the actual Battle of Thermopylae, the Spartans had already joined an alliance with other Greek poleis against the Persians. During the Battle of Thermopylae, Xerxes' invasion of Greece coincided with a Spartan religious festival, the Carneia, in which the Spartans were not permitted to make war. Still, realizing the threat of the Persians and not wanting to appear as Persian sympathizers, the Spartan government, rather than Leonidas alone, decided to send Leonidas with his personal 300-strong bodyguard to Thermopylae. Other Greek poleis joined the 300 Spartan men and totaled somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 total Greek troops. The historical consensus among both ancient chroniclers and current scholars was that Thermopylae was a clear Greek defeat, and the Persian invasion would be pushed back only in later ground and naval battles. Since few records on the actual martial arts used by the Spartans survive aside from accounts of formations and tactics, the fight choreography, led by the stunt coordinator and fight choreographer Damon Caro, was a synthesis of different weapon arts with Filipino martial arts as the base. Paul Cartledge, professor of Greek history at Cambridge University, advised the filmmakers on the pronunciation of Greek names and said that they made good use of his published work on Sparta. He praised the film for its portrayal of the Spartans' heroic code and of the key role played by women in backing up, indeed reinforcing, the male martial code of heroic honor. But he expressed reservations about its West goodies versus East baddies polarization. Cartledge wrote that he enjoyed the film, but found Leonidas's description of the Athenians as boy lovers ironic, since the Spartans themselves incorporated institutional pederasty into their educational system. Ephraim Lytle, assistant professor of Hellenistic history at the University of Toronto, said that 300 selectively idealized Spartan society in a problematic and disturbing fashion and portrayed the 100 nations of the Persians as monsters and non-Spartan Greeks as weak. He suggested that the film's moral universe would have seemed as bizarre to ancient Greeks as it does to modern historians. Lytle also commented, Ephialtes, who betrays the Greeks, is likewise changed from a local Malian of sound body into a Spartan outcast, a grotesquely disfigured troll who by Spartan custom should have been left exposed as an infant to die. Leonidas points out that his hunched back means Ephialtes cannot lift his shield high enough to fight in the phalanx. This is a transparent defense of Spartan eugenics, and convenient given that infanticide could as easily have been precipitated by an ill-omened birthmark. Victor Davis Hanson, a National Review columnist and former professor of classical history at California State University, Fresno, wrote the foreword to a 2007 reissue of the graphic novel and said that the film demonstrates a specific affinity with the original material of Herodotus in that it captures the martial ethos of ancient Sparta and represents Thermopylae as a clash of civilizations. He remarked that Simonides, Aeschylus, and Herodotus viewed Thermopylae as a battle against Eastern centralism and collective serfdom, which opposed the idea of the free citizen of an autonomous polis. He also said that the film portrays the battle in a surreal manner and that the intent was to entertain and shock first and instruct second. Touraj Daryai, who is now Baskerville Professor of Iranian History and the Persian World at the University of California, Irvine, criticized the film's use of classical sources by writing, "Some passages from the classical authors Aeschylus, Diodorus, Herodotus, and Plutarch are spilt over the movie to give it an authentic flavor. Aeschylus becomes a major source when the battle with the monstrous human herd of the Persians is narrated in the film. Diodorus' statement about Greek valor to preserve their liberty is inserted in the film, but his mention of Persian valor is omitted. Herodotus' fanciful numbers are used to populate the Persian army, and Plutarch's discussion of Greek women, specifically Spartan women, is inserted wrongly in the dialogue between the misogynist Persian ambassador and the Spartan king. Classical sources are certainly used, but exactly in all the wrong places, or quite naively. The Athenians were fighting a sea battle during this. Robert McHenry, the former editor-in-chief of Encyclopedia Britannica and the author of How to Know, said that the film is an almost ineffably silly movie. Stills from the film could easily be used to promote buns of steel, or abmaster, or thighmaster. It's about the romanticizing of the Spartan ideal, a process that began even in ancient times, was promoted by the Romans, and has survived over time while less and less resembling the actual historical Sparta. Snyder stated in an MTV interview that the events are 90% accurate. It's just in the visualization that it's crazy. I've shown this movie to world-class historians who have said it's amazing. They can't believe it's as accurate as it is. Nevertheless, he also said the film is an opera, not a documentary. That's what I say when people say it's historically inaccurate. He was also quoted in a BBC News story as saying that the film is, at its core, a fantasy film. He also describes the film's narrator, Dilios, as a guy who knows how not to wreck a good story with truth. In an interview, Miller stated, "The inaccuracies, almost all of them, are intentional. I took those chest plates and leather skirts off of them for a reason. I wanted these guys to move, and I wanted them to look good. I knocked their helmets off a fair amount, partly so you can recognize who the characters are. Spartans in full regalia were almost indistinguishable except at a very close angle. Another liberty I took was, they all had plumes, but I only gave a plume to Leonidas to make him stand out and identify him as a king. I was looking for more an evocation than a history lesson. The best result I can hope for is that if the movie excites someone, they'll go explore the histories themselves, because the histories are endlessly fascinating." Kaveh Farouk, in the paper The 300 Movie, Separating Fact from Fiction, noted that the film falsely portrayed the Greco-Persian wars in binary terms: the democratic, good, rational us versus the tyrannical, evil, and irrational other of the ever-nebulous, if not exotic, Persia. He highlighted 3 points regarding the contribution of the Achaemenid Empire to the creation of democracy and human rights. The founder of the Achaemenid Empire, Cyrus the Great, was the world's first emperor to openly declare and guarantee the sanctity of human rights and individual freedom. Cyrus was a follower of the teachings of Zoroaster, the founder of one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions. When Cyrus defeated King Nabonidus of Babylon, he officially declared the freedom of the Jews from their Babylonian captivity. This was the first time in history that a world power had guaranteed the survival of the Jewish people, religion, customs, and culture. He abolished slavery. General criticism. Before the release of 300, Warner Bros. Expressed concerns about the political aspects of the film's theme. Snyder relates that there was a huge sensitivity about East versus West with the studio. Media speculation about a possible parallel between the Greco-Persian conflict and current events began in an interview with Snyder that was conducted before the Berlin Film Festival. The interviewer remarked that everyone is sure to be translating this film into contemporary politics. Snyder replied that he was aware that people would read the film through the lens of current events, but no parallels between the film and the modern world were intended. Outside current political parallels, some critics have raised more general questions about the film's ideological orientation. Slate's Dana Stevens compared the film to The Eternal Jew, 1940, as a textbook example of how race-baiting fantasy and nationalist myth can serve as an incitement to total war. Since it's a product of the post-ideological, post-Xbox 21st century, 300 will instead be talked about as a technical achievement, the next blip on the increasingly blurry line between movies and video games. Roger Moore, a critic for the Orlando Sentinel, relates 300 to Susan Sontag's definition of fascist art. Indeed, the lambda sign on the Spartans' shields in 300 formed the inspiration for the official symbol of the far-right identitarian movement. Newsday critic Gene Seymour, on the other hand, stated that such reactions are misguided, writing that the movie's just too darn silly to withstand any ideological theorizing. Snyder himself dismissed ideological readings, suggesting that reviewers who critique a graphic novel movie about a bunch of guys stomping the snot out of each other, using words like neocon, homophobic, homoerotic, or racist, are missing the point. Snyder, however, also admitted to fashioning an effeminate villain specifically to make young straight males in the audience uncomfortable. What's more scary to a 20-year-old boy than a giant god king who wants to have his way with you? The Slovenian critic Slavoj Žižek pointed out that the story represents a poor, small country, Greece, invaded by the army of a much large state, Persia, and suggested the identification of the Spartans with a modern superpower to be flawed. The writer Frank Miller said, "The Spartans were a paradoxical people. They were the biggest slave owners in Greece. But at the same time, Spartan women had an unusual level of rights. It's a paradox that they were a bunch of people who in many ways were fascist, but they were the bulwark against the fall of democracy." The closest comparison you can draw in terms of our own military today is to think of the red-caped Spartans as being like our special ops forces. They're these almost superhuman characters with a tremendous warrior ethic who were unquestionably the best fighters in Greece. I didn't want to render Sparta in overly accurate terms because ultimately I do want you to root for the Spartans. I couldn't show them being quite as cruel as they were. I made them as cruel as I thought a modern audience could stand. Michael M. Kemmers, author of With Your Shield or On It, Disability Representation in 300, in the Disability Studies Quarterly, said that the film's portrayal of the hunchback and his story is not mere ableism. This is anti-disability. Frank Miller, commenting on areas in which he lessened the Spartan cruelty for narrative purposes, said, "I have King Leonidas very gently tell Ephialtes, the hunchback, that they can't use him as a soldier because of his deformity. It would be much more classically Spartan if Leonidas laughed and kicked him off the cliff." Iranian criticism. From its opening, 300 also attracted controversy over its portrayal of Persians. Officials of the Iranian government denounced the film. Some scenes in the film portray demon-like and other fictional creatures as part of the Persian army, and the fictionalized portrayal of Persian King Xerxes has been criticized as effeminate. Critics suggested that it was meant to stand in stark contrast to the portrayed masculinity of the Spartan army. Stephen Rea argued that the film's Persians were a vehicle for an anachronistic cross-section of Western aspirational stereotypes of Asian and African cultures. The film's portrayal of ancient Persians caused a particularly strong reaction in Iran. Various Iranian officials condemned the film. The Iranian Academy of the Arts submitted a formal complaint against the film to UNESCO that called it an attack on the historical identity of Iran. The Iranian mission to the United Nations protested the film in a press release, and Iranian embassies protested its screening in France, Thailand, Turkey, and Uzbekistan. The film was banned in Iran, with it being considered American propaganda. Reviewers in the United States and elsewhere noted the political overtones of the West against Iran's storyline and the way Persians are depicted as decadent, sexually flamboyant, and evil in contrast to the noble Greeks. With black market copies of the film already available in Tehran, with the film's international release and news of the film's surprising success at the U.S. box office, the film prompted widespread anger in Iran. Azadeh Moaveni of Time reported, "All of Tehran was outraged. Everywhere I went yesterday, the talk vibrated with indignation over the film." Newspapers in Iran featured headlines such as, "Hollywood declares war on Iranians," and 300 against 70 million, the latter being the size of Iran's population. Allende No, an independent Iranian newspaper, said, The film depicts Iranians as demons, without culture, feeling, or humanity, who think of nothing except attacking other nations and killing people. 4 members of Majlis, the Iranian parliament, called on other Muslim countries to ban the film, and a group of Iranian filmmakers submitted a letter of protest to UNESCO regarding the film's misrepresentation of Iranian history and culture. The cultural advisor to Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad called the film an American attempt for psychological warfare against Iran. Moaveni identified 2 factors that may have contributed to the intensity of Iranian indignation over the film. Firstly, she described the timing of the film's release, on the eve of Nowruz, the Persian New Year, as inauspicious. Secondly, Iranians tend to view the era depicted in the film as a particularly noble page in their history. Moaveni suggested that 300's box office success compared with Alexander's failure, another spurious period epic dealing with Persians, was cause for considerable alarm, signaling ominous U.S. intentions. According to The Guardian, Iranian critics of 300, ranging from bloggers to government officials, described the movie as a calculated attempt to demonize Iran at a time of intensifying U.S. pressure over the country's nuclear program. An Iranian government spokesman described the film as hostile behavior, which is the result of cultural and psychological warfare. Moaveni reported that the Iranians with whom she interacted were adamant that the movie was secretly funded by the U.S. government to prepare Americans for going to war against Iran. In popular culture, 300 has been spoofed in film, television, and other media, and spawned the "This is Sparta" internet meme during the late 2000s. Skits based upon the film have appeared on Saturday Night Live and Robot Chicken, the latter of which mimicked the visual style of 300 in a parody set during the American Revolutionary War, titled 1776. Other parodies include an episode of South Park named D-Yikes, the short film United 300, which won the 2007 MTV Movie Spoof Award, and Boo by Mad Magazine in its September 2007 issue number 481, written by Desmond Devlin and illustrated by Mort Drucker. 20th Century Fox released Meet the Spartans, a spoof directed by Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer. Universal Pictures once planned a similar parody, titled National Lampoon's 301, The Legend of Awesomest Maximus Wallace Leonidas. 300, particularly its pithy quotations, has been adopted by the student body of Michigan State University, whose nickname is the Spartans, with chants of "Spartans, what is your profession?" becoming common at sporting events starting after the film's release. And Michigan State basketball head coach Tom Izzo dressed as Leonidas at one student event. Nate Ebner, a football player with the New England Patriots in the National Football League and formerly with the Ohio State Buckeyes, was nicknamed Leonidas because of his intense workout regimen and his beard. Sequel. Main article 300 Rise of an Empire. In June 2008, producers Mark Canton, Gianni Nunnari, and Bernie Goldmann revealed that work had begun on a sequel to 300 Rise of an Empire. Legendary Pictures had announced that Frank Miller had started writing the follow-up graphic novel and that Zack Snyder was interested in directing the adaptation, but moved on to develop and direct the Superman reboot and DC Extended Universe first installment, Man of Steel. Noah Murrow directed instead, while Zack Snyder produced. The film focused on the Athenian admiral Themistocles, as portrayed by Australian actor Sullivan Stapleton. The sequel, 300 Rise of an Empire, was released on March 7, 2014, and grossed $337 million worldwide. I gave a 4-star rating to Sin City, the 2005 film based on a graphic novel by Frank Miller. Now, as I deserve, I get 300 based on another work by Miller. Of the earlier film, I wrote prophetically, "This isn't an adaptation of a comic book. It's like a comic book brought to life and pumped with steroids." They must have been buying steroids wholesale for 300. Every single male character, including the Hunchback, has the muscles of a finalist for Mr. Universe. Both films are faithful to Miller's plots and drawings. 300, I learn, reflects the book almost panel by panel. They lean so heavily on CGI that many shots are entirely computer created. Why did I like the first and dislike the second? Perhaps because of the subject matter, always a good place to start. Sin City, directed by Robert Rodriguez and Miller, is film noir, my favorite genre, taken to the extreme. 300, directed by Zack Snyder, is ancient carnage, my least favorite genre, taken beyond the extreme. Sin City has vividly conceived characters and stylized dialogue. 300 has one-dimensional caricatures who talk like professional wrestlers plugging their next feud. The movie involves a legendary last stand by 300 death-obsessed Spartans against a teeming horde of Persians. So brave and strong are the Spartans that they skewer, eviscerate, behead, and otherwise inconvenience tens of thousands of Persians before finally falling to the weight of overwhelming numbers. The lesson is that the Spartans are free and the Persians are slaves. Although the Spartan idea of freedom is not appetizing, children are beaten to toughen them. But to return to those muscles. Although real actors play the characters and their faces are convincing, I believe their bodies are almost entirely digital creations. They have Schwarzeneggerian biceps, and every last one of them, even the Greybirds, wear well-defined six-packs on their abs. I can almost believe the star, Gerard Butler, may have been working out at Gold's Gym ever since he starred as the undernourished Phantom of the Opera, but not 300. 200, or even 100 extras. As a result, every single time I regarded the Spartans in a group, I realized I was seeing artistic renderings, not human beings. Well, maybe that was the idea. The movie presents other scenes of impossibility. Look at the long shots of the masked Persians. There are so many, they would have presented a logistical nightmare. How to feed and water them. Consider the slave-borne chariot that Xerxes pulls up in. It is larger than the imperial throne in the Forbidden City, with a wide staircase leading up to Xerxes. Impressive, but how could such a monstrosity be lugged all the way from Persia to Greece? I am not expected to apply such logic, I know, but the movie flaunts its preposterous effects. And what about Xerxes, Rodrigo Santoro himself? He stands around 8 feet tall, I guess, which is good for 500 BC, Santoro's height in life, 6 feet 2.75 inches. He towers over Leonidas, Butler, so we know his body isn't really there. But what of his face? I am just about prepared to believe that the ancient Persians went in for the piercing of ears, cheeks, eyebrows, noses, lips, and chins, but his eyebrow have been plucked and redrawn into black arches that would make Joan Crawford envious. And what about the mascara and the cute little white lines on the eyelids? When the Spartans described the Athenians as philosophers and boy lovers, I wish they had gone right ahead to discuss the Persians. The Spartans travel light. They come bare-chested, dressed in sandals, bikini briefs and capes. They carry swords and shields. At the right time, they produce helmets, which must have been concealed in their loincloths. Also apples, and from the looks of them, protein shakes. They are very athletic, able to construct a towering wall of thousands of dead Persians in hours, even after going to all the trouble of butchering them. When they go into battle, their pep talks sound like the screams of drunken sports fans swarming onto the field. They talk, as I suggested, like pro wrestlers, touting the big showdown between Edge and The Undertaker. "Be afraid," they rumble, stopping just short of adding, "Be very afraid." They talk about going on the warpath, unaware that the phrase had not yet been coined by American Indians. Their women, like Gorgo, Lena Headey, Queen of Leonidas, are as bloodthirsty as their men, just like wrestlers' wives. All true enough, but my deepest objection to the movie is that it is so blood-soaked. When dialogue arrives to interrupt the carnage, it's like the seventh inning stretch. In slow motion, blood and body parts spraying through the air, the movie shows dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of horrible deaths. This can get depressing. In old movies, ancient Greeks were usually sort of noble. Now they have become lager louts. They celebrate a fascist ideal. They assume a bloodthirsty audience, or one suffering from attention deficit. How many disembowelings do you have to see to get the idea? They have no grace and wisdom in their speech, nor dignity in their bearing. They strut with arrogant pride. They are a nasty bunch. As Joe Mantegna says in House of Games, "You're a bad pony, and I'm not going to bet on you." That's right before he dies, of course. Plot. In 480 BC, a state of war exists between Persia, led by King Xerxes, and Greece. At the Battle of Thermopylae, Leonidas, Gerard Butler, king of the Greek city-state of Sparta, leads his badly outnumbered warriors against the massive Persian army. Though certain death awaits the Spartans, their sacrifice inspires all of Greece to unite against their common enemy. Based on the graphic novel by Frank Miller, Sin City, and Lynn Varley. Review. It had been a while since I last watched 300, but I saw the complete experience Blu-ray book for $6.99 the other day and decided to pick it up and revisit it. Zack Snyder is one of the most polarizing directors working today, but 300 for me is his finest hour, and it bothers me that I will never be as manly as Leonidas, or frankly, any of the 300 Spartans. In fact, I think I have more in common with the hunchback Ephialtes instead. Anyway, we all know the story of 300 Spartan men facing off against the god king Xerxes, endless armies. And it's a tale of standing up for what's right, and as writer Frank Miller states in one of the interviews on this disc, not all heroes get a medal at the end. This is one of the shoutiest movies you'll ever see, with Gerard Butler at his grizzled best spewing classic lines like, "This is Sparta," amongst many others. Most of the movie was filmed in a warehouse, if I'm not mistaken, and although you can tell it's green screen, it still pulls you into this fantasy world and is fast-paced with plentiful scenes of bloodshed and action. The visuals are still mesmerizing, and the music score is epic, with huge choirs and percussion during the many battle scenes. 300 is really more style than substance, but there is still heart to the story, especially the relationship between Leonidas and his wife Gorgo, Lena Headey. She knows he is going off to his doom, but she wants the Spartans to send reinforcements, so she spends most of the movie trying to meet with the council while also dealing with the sleazy traitor Theron, Dominic West. It's got a great supporting cast including a long-haired Michael Fassbender and David Wenham, who also provides the narration, but Lena Headey is one of the best characters, proving to be tough, yet loving at the same time. 300, Rise of an Empire, is the little-known sequel to Zack Snyder's smash hit 300, and many fans of the original film are wondering if they should check out the 2014 follow-up. The film acts as a prequel and a sequel to the timeline of 300, with it expanding on the events of the film by showing another battle that was taking place at around the same time as Leonidas's battle at Thermopylae. While 300 is still incredibly popular, 300, Rise of an Empire isn't as well known, with tons of viewers of the original film not having checked it out yet. Zack Snyder's 300 is one of the director's biggest hits, with the film telling the story of the Battle of Thermopylae, in which King Leonidas and his 300 Spartans fought the much bigger Persian army. 300 is based on a comic series of the same name, and the film adaptation was a huge success, with it making $456 million on a $60 million budget and receiving positive critical reviews. Because of the success of 300, a sequel attempted to capitalize on the original film, with 300, Rise of an Empire following in the original movie's footsteps. 300, Rise of an Empire didn't perform as well critically as its 2006 predecessor, with the film having a 45% score from critics on Rotten Tomatoes as of the writing of this article. This reflects the mixed and negative reviews that the sequel received upon its release, with 300, Rise of an Empire not impressing many critics. The film didn't do well with general audiences either, as 300, Rise of an Empire only has a 51% audience score, meaning that everyday viewers only liked it slightly more on average than the critics. Although 300, Rise of an Empire has a worse Rotten Tomatoes score than 300, it isn't by too much. The first 300 movie only has a 61% critics score, meaning that, while on average critics liked 300 more, it wasn't by much. The bigger difference comes when looking at the audience score, as 300 has an 89%, which is much higher than 300 Rise of an Empire's 51% via Rotten Tomatoes. So, while critics tend to be bigger fans of the first 300, the same is even more true for general audiences. The Rotten Tomatoes score of 300, Rise of an Empire, reflects the mixed reviews that the film has gotten, as some parts were well liked by viewers, but other parts were not. The biggest positives of the film have to do with the action, as the reviews tend to praise the fight scenes and gore, something that 300 got right. Eva Green's performance as the Greek queen Artemisia has also been acclaimed, with it being one of the best aspects of the film. However, even these parts of 300, Rise of an Empire, aren't as good as similar parts in 300. While the action is good, it is hard to compare to Zack Snyder's legendary 300 action scenes, parts of which went on to define the director's style. On top of that, nearly every performance in 300 is legendary, and that is mostly due to the film's writing. 300 is full of famous quotes that have become iconic since the film was first released in 2006, with this having a hand in elevating each character and actor. While the reviews for 300, Rise of an Empire, are mixed, it is worth watching for some. Fans of the original 300 will be able to get a lot out of 300 Rise of an Empire, as it explores the world further and brings back the signature style and tone of the Zack Snyder movie and the original comics. On top of that, fans of historical action epics in general will enjoy 300 Rise of an Empire, as it features many of the genre's staples. Not only does 300 Rise of an Empire explore the true story of the battles it portrays, but it also adds in some elements in order to make it seem more epic, similar to the original 300. So while the film may not be a hit with everyone, there are definitely fans out there who will love 300 Rise of an Empire. 300 of his elite warriors against the overwhelming Persian Empire. The graphic novel's bold visual storytelling style became a template for how the movie would eventually be crafted. The film's screenwriters, Zack Snyder, C.T. Johnstad, and Michael B. Gordon, stayed remarkably true to the source material. They crafted a script that would highlight not only the heroic deeds of the Spartans, but also the larger-than-life personalities that emerged during one of the most iconic battles in history. One of the most important decisions in translating 300 from page to screen was the film's distinctive visual style. Snyder and his team decided to embrace the graphic novel's highly stylized imagery, heavily relying on CGI and green screen effects to recreate the battlefields of ancient Greece. The film's iconic look, with its heavily saturated colors, exaggerated slow-motion sequences, and rich contrasts, came from this decision to push beyond traditional cinematography. Everything from the costume designs to the landscapes, even the textures of blood spilt during the battles, was created with the visual aesthetic of the graphic novel in mind. The filmmaking process itself was an unusual one for a historical epic. Most of the scenes in 300 were filmed in front of green screens. In fact, about 90% of the film's imagery was created digitally with very little actual shooting done on location, while some exterior shots were filmed in the desert of Montreal, Canada. The majority of the film sets were created in post-production through CGI. This innovative approach allowed for the creation of vast, hyper-stylized landscapes that were impossible to achieve in a traditional set. The filmmakers were able to craft every aspect of the film's environment, from the mountains in which the Spartans made their stand to the enormous armies of the Persians, making the world of 300 a visually unique one for the cast. This meant that much of the filming was done in studio environment, with actors interacting in front of green screens. The actors had to imagine the environments they were placed in, and often had very little to work with in terms of physical set design. Gerard Butler, who portrayed King Leonidas, and the rest of the Spartan cast, including Michael Fassbender, David Wenham, and others, had to bring their characters to life with only a limited amount of physical surroundings to interact with. But despite the lack of traditional sets, the actors' performances were key to giving the film an emotional core that would match its visual spectacle. Butler, in particular, would be put through a grueling physical regimen to prepare for his role as the muscular and fearless Leonidas. The actor worked tirelessly with trainers pushing his body to its limits in order to achieve the look of a battle-hardened warrior. His transformation, which included a strict diet and intense weightlifting, became one of the most the myth. Ted about aspects of the film's production. Not only did he need to build the strength and muscle mass of a Spartan king, but he also had to maintain the endurance to perform the intense action sequences required for the role. Interestingly, the film's extreme visual stylization had its roots in the very technology used to film it. The movie's production was revolutionary in how it used CGI technology. The team of visual effects artists employed cutting-edge techniques to digitally render vast landscapes, massive armies, and highly choreographed action sequences. The amount of CGI work involved was staggering, and it often required an immense amount of collaboration between the special effects team and the cinematographers to ensure the right visual feel was maintained, even in scenes involving the most intense battles, where hundreds of warriors clashed on screen. Every element was digitally manipulated to ensure that the right tone, texture, and style were maintained throughout. Another fascinating aspect of the film's production was the decision to emphasize slow-motion sequences. These shots, which became one of 300's most iconic visual signature, were meant to create a heightened sense of drama and intensity. The choreography for these slow-motion moments was meticulously crafted to look fluid and cinematic, showcasing the Spartans' precision and strength as they cut through their enemies. It was also a way to exaggerate the violence of the battle, turning the combat into a ballad of destruction, a dance of death that emphasized the Spartans' unmatched prowess. These slow-motion shots were paired with the use of sharp high-contrast lighting and deep shadows, which further contributed to the stylized atmosphere that became a hallmark of the film. The film's post-production was another key component in creating its distinct visual style. After the bulk of the shooting wrapped up, the editing team, led by Jane and Tangren, worked tirelessly to piece together the film's narrative. The editing process was intense and took over a year to complete, as the team carefully balanced the action, dialogue, and emotional beats of the story, as the scenes were mostly filmed in front of green screens. The editing process was crucial in making the performances feel grounded within the world of the film. The crew worked alongside the visual effects team to seamlessly blend live-action footage with the digitally created landscapes and armies. The film's music also played an integral role in elevating its emotional and dramatic weight. The soundtrack, composed by Tyler Bates, is filled with heavy tribal drumming, ethereal melodies, and epic choral arrangements. The music is designed to match the grandiose visuals, and its pounding rhythms drive the action forward while also underscoring the emotional depth of the characters' struggles. Bates worked closely with Snyder to craft a musical score that would be as iconic as the film's visual aesthetic. The intense driving music became synonymous with the film's high-energy sequences and emotional moments alike. The score was also innovative in how it blended traditional orchestral arrangements with electronic elements, giving it a modern edge that fit the film's tone perfectly. Another fun fact about the film's production is the unique training techniques employed by the cast to prepare for their fight sequences. The actors went through rigorous boot camp-style training with military-style drills and a focus on combat tactics. They also trained with swords, shields, and spears, traditional Spartan weapons, to learn the mechanics of ancient warfare. The cast learned not just how to use these weapons effectively, but how to fight as a unit. The rigorous physical training was aimed at creating a sense of brotherhood among the actors, mirroring the bond their characters shared on screen. The training was so demanding that some actors actually experienced significant weight loss and physical exhaustion due to the intensity of the preparation. One more fascinating behind-the-scenes story involved the creation of the film's iconic costumes. The Spartan warriors' armor and clothing were designed to look both practical and visually striking, fitting with the film's stylized approach. The actors spent long hours being fitted for the armor, which was often made of leather and metal and custom-fitted to each performer. Despite the physicality of wearing armor on set, the actors were able to move with agility and speed, ensuring that the choreography could be executed smoothly. The attention to detail in the costume design, coupled with the lighting and color palette, helped create a look that was both ancient and timeless. while 300 was an intense production filled with technical challenges and demanding physical feats. The end result is a film that stands out for its visual flair, emotional resonance, and compelling storytelling. The production process, from its innovative use of CGI and cutting-edge visual effects to the rigorous physical training of the cast, contributed to the creation of a cinematic experience that feels both epic and intimate. The making of 300 was a feat of imagination, technology, and physical endurance, and its success at the box office and with audiences speaks to the incredible work that went into bringing the Spartan's tale to life on the big screen through its bold vision. 300 became not just a film, but a cultural touchstone, leaving a lasting impact on the genre and on cinema as a whole. The setting of 300 is more than just a backdrop. It is an essential part of the film's identity, from the sweeping deserts to the claustrophobic battlefields. Every location and environment was designed to amplify the intense emotions and grandeur of the story. Director Zack Snyder, working with a dedicated team of production designers, cinematographers, and visual effects artists, carefully crafted each setting to serve not only as a physical space, but also as an emotional canvas. These locations, though mostly rendered through digital effects, create a world that feels both timeless and immediate. A world in which the ancient clash between the Greek city-states and the Persian Empire comes to life in vivid, powerful detail. The opening scenes of 300 are set in the rugged Spartan landscape. The rocky terrain and harsh, unforgiving environment establish the film's tone immediately. The Spartan city of Sparta itself, as imagined in the film, is a stark and imposing place, built to withstand both time and the brutality of war. The film never shows the city in its entirety, keeping it largely confined to the arena of battle, the training grounds, and the Spartan king's palace. However, the environment is always present, a constant reminder of the harsh Spartan ethos of survival, strength, and discipline. The use of dry, barren landscapes and rocky hills in the opening sequences conveys a sense of isolation and desolation, reinforcing the Spartan warriors' relentless training and the extreme lifestyle they lead. It is a place where hardship is embraced, where suffering is woven into the very fabric of the culture, and where the men who live there are constantly honing their bodies and minds for war. The visual style of 300 is dominated by the use of green screens, and the majority of the film's settings were digitally created in post-production. But rather than feeling artificial or forced, the settings feel like a deliberate extension of the graphic novel's world. The film's landscape is highly stylized, often leaning toward exaggerated hues of red gold and deep shadowy tones, creating a world where light and darkness battle for supremacy. The look of 300 is a world of contrasts, brilliant whites and golds, highlighting the pristine armor and towering statues, paired with the harsh, dark shadows of the war-ravaged plains. Every location, even the grand temples of the Persian Empire, or the vast battlefield at them, has been meticulously crafted to evoke a certain feeling or emotion, whether it's awe, dread, or grare. One of the most striking settings in 300 is the battlefield of Theropo itself. The narrow pass where the Spartans made their stand against the overwhelming Persian forces is both visually stunning and symbolically calming. The pass is shown as a narrow strip of land between towering cliffs and the sea, emphasizing the idea of limited space, tight quarters, and inevitably confrontation. The Spartans are outnumbered, but their location gives them an advantage. The natural setting, rugged and claustrophobic, gives them the opportunity to fight with strategy and precision rather than just strength. The pass becomes a microcosm of Spartan discipline, where every step, every swing of a sword is calculated. This setting serves as an excellent metaphor for the film's central theme, the valor of fighting against impossible odds. The cliffs on either side of the pass loom over the battle, towering above the soldiers, in a way that makes the Spartans appear even smaller against the enormity of the forces arrayed against them. This sense of being dwarfed by the environment highlights the powerlessness of individual warriors in the face of overwhelming numbers, yet within this limited space, the Spartans stand firm. creating a paradox that infuses the entire battle with tension. The choice of Theop as a setting is therefore not just resilience and heroism that run throughout the film. Another key setting in 300 is the Persian court, the luxurious and decadent world of King Xerxes and his armies. This is in stark contrast to the Spartan landscape. While Sparta is a place of discipline, hardship, and bare necessity, the Persian Empire is portrayed as opulent, extravagant, and corrupt. The set design for Xerxes' court uses gold, lush fabrics, and statues that dwarf the figures of those within them, symbolizing the Persian king's grandiosity and narcissism. The court, a cavernous and surreal place, feels both regal and suffocating. The huge statues of Xerxes and his dark dream-like surroundings create an almost godlike aura around him, painting him as a ruler whose power is both divine and tyrannical. The extravagant costumes worn by the Persian soldiers and courtiers are designed to reflect their wealth and excess, contrasting sharply with the Spartan pun-intended armor. This visual contrast serves to highlight the ideological differences between the Spartans and the Persians. Where the Spartans are rugged and fierce, the Persians are decadent and tyrannical. Their wealth and power are seen as a distraction from true strength and the they. Imagery in this setting drives this theme home. What makes these settings so effective is not just the design, but the way they are photographed. Cinematographer Larry Fong used a combination of natural lighting and digital effects to create a high-contrast look that would evoke both realism and the heightened drama of a graphic novel. The stylized color grading throughout the film plays a significant role in establishing mood and tone. The warm golds and reds that dominate the battle scenes contrast sharply with the cool blues and greens of the Persian court, helping to distinguish the Spartans' world from that of their enemies. The contrast between the cool, clean tones of the Persian palace and the rough, warm earth tones of the Spartan battlefields enhances the idea of moral and physical disparity. The colors don't just reflect the environment, they reflect the values of the characters inhabiting them. The use of lighting is equally critical to creating mood. In 300, often scenes are bathed in deep shadows with sharply defined beams of light cutting through the darkness, which enhances the feeling of the warriors being larger than life, figures set against the overwhelming forces of darkness. This technique also intensifies the action sequences, where light and shadow are manipulated to create dynamic compositions. Whether it's the harsh sunlight pouring down on the Spartans as they march into battle, or the dimly lit interiors of the Persian palace, lighting is used to underscore the emotional weight of. With the slow-motion action sequences, allows for a heightened sense of drama as the film slows down the action and shifts to these beautifully lit, highly stylized frames. Each fight becomes a choreographed spectacle, an almost operatic display of power, skill, and emotion. The cinematog, wide-angle shots to emphasize the enormity of the armies facing each other on the battlefield. The vastness of the Persian forces stretching out across the battlefield is often depicted as a swarm of humanity, while the Spartans remain small, but resolute in the foreground. These shots work not only to convey the disparity in numbers, but to visually enhance the idea of the Spartans fighting for something much larger than themselves. They are warriors, not just defending their lives, but representing freedom and honor in the face of an overwhelming force. The way the film uses visual effects is another crucial element of its cinematic atmosphere. The digital environments that were crafted for 300 are often seamless, blending with the actors' performances to create a unified world that feels both epic and intimate. The use of CGI allowed for highly choreographed, complex battle sequences where the Spartans fight in ways that would be impossible in real life. The exaggerated use of blood, the slow-motion imp of each spear thrust, and the dramatic clashes between the armies all lend to the film's larger-than-life sensibility. The action scenes are designed to be thrilling, visceral, and almost dreamlike in their intensity. As the warriors clash, the camera often moves through the action in ways that make the viewer feel as though they are part of the battle itself, making each moment feel all the more intense beyond the battle sequences. 300 uses cinematography to enhance its emotional moments, from the quiet, reflective moments between between Leonidas and his wife Gorgo to the fiery speeches given before battle. These moments are framed with intimacy, often using close-up shots to capture the expressions of the characters, making the audience feel as if they are standing beside the Spartan king as he faces his fate. These visual choices work to underline the emotional stakes of the film, bringing depth to characters who on the surface may seem like larger-than-life figures. The color palette, lighting techniques, and use of CGI and slow motion all serve to immerse the audience in a world where the lines between reality and graphic novel art are blurred, creating a film that feels like an extension of the graphic novel's pages. Every setting in 300, from the battlefields to the palaces, is more than just a backdrop for the action. It is an integral part of the film's identity, contributing to its emotional thematic elements and visual storytelling through its combination of dramatic settings, expert cinematography, and innovative visual effects. 300 achieves a cinematic atmosphere that is as unforgettable as the legendary battle. It depicts the settings in 300 are not just locations, they are vivid living parts of the story, helping to tell the epic tale of the Spartan warriors and their stand against the Persian Empire. The making of 300 was a journey as intense and dramatic as the story itself. From the very beginning, director Zack Snyder and his team sought to create a film that was not only a visual spectacle, but also a powerful telling of the legendary Battle of the Mop. To achieve this, they faced numerous challenges, many of which required creative solutions, inventive thinking, and a deep commitment from both the cast and the crew. The journey to bring this epic story to the screen was full of surprises, and the behind-the-scenes stories are as captivating as the film itself. One of the most striking aspects of 300 was its visual style, which was heavily influenced by Frank Miller's graphic novel of the same name. This look was achieved by using extensive green screen work and digital effects, which created a world that felt at once surreal and grounded in reality. The film's distinctive look was a product of the visionary work of Snyder Production, designer James Bissell, and cinematographer Larry Fong. But creating this world was no easy feat, and the process of doing so required a great deal of collaboration between the entire production team. The green screen sets were a particular challenge for the actors, as they had to perform in environments that weren't physically present the majority of the battle sequences, and many of the film settings were created digitally, and the actors had to use their imagination to fill in the gaps. Gerard Butler, who played the iconic role of King Leonidas, recalled how challenging it was to work with minimal sets. There was so much going on in post-production that we had to work with very little. He said, we were often in a blank space with nothing but a few props, and you had to really imagine the world around you. It was unlike anything for this posed a unique challenge for the actors, but they rose to the occasion, relying on their strong performances and the direction from Snyder to bring the world of 300 to life. In addition to the green screen work, the film's heavy reliance on CGI also meant that the actors were often performing scenes with little to no context of what the final product would look like. They had to trust that the visual effects team would create the epic battles, enormous armies, and stunning landscapes that would be added in post-production for many of the actors, including Butler. This was an unfamiliar way of working, but they embraced the challenge. It was all about trust. Butler explained, we had to trust Zack and the team that they were going to create something amazing, and we had to give our best performances even though we didn't always know exactly what we were looking at, despite the uncertainty. The actors' dedication to their craft helped ensure that the emotional core of the story was never lost amidst the digital effects. One of the most famous scenes in 300 is the brutal training montage in which the training involved rigorous physicality, including sword fighting, spear drills, and intense martial arts sequences in preparation for these scenes. Butler and the rest of the cast underwent a grueling fitness regimen, which was designed to ensure that they could perform these stunts and fight sequences with authenticity and power. The actors had to push their bodies to the limit, and many of them, including Butler, gained significant muscle mass to portray the physically imposing Spartans. Butler, who had already undergone a physical transformation for his role in the Phantom of the Opera, recalled how challenging it was to get in shape for 300. It was a crazy workout regimen. He said, I was lifting weights, doing martial arts training, running, swimming. It was non-stop, and we were all doing it together. So there was a sense of camaraderie among the cast. The physical demands were intense, but they paid off in the end, as the actors' performance were both powerful and believable. Butler wasn't the only one who underwent a physical transformation. For the film, the rest of the cast, including the likes of Michael Fassbender, who played the role of Stelios, and David Wenham, who portrayed Dilo, also underwent rigorous training. Fassbender, who would later become a major Hollywood star, had to hone his sword-fighting skills for the role. I had never done anything like this before, Bender recalled. I had to learn how to wield a sword and fight in these large, elaborate battle sequences. It was incredibly physical and demanding, but it was also one of the most rewarding experiences I've had as an actor. The actors' commitment to their roles and battle scenes feel authentic and visceral. The iconic slow-motion action sequences in 300 were a major element of the film's style, and they presented a unique challenge during production. Snyder, who is known for his use of slow-motion photography, wanted the battle scenes to feel epic and larger than life. He wanted to emphasize the power and precision of each strike, and slow motion allowed him to achieve that. However, capturing these sequences was a complex process. Many of the fight scenes were filmed in real time, and then the footage was slowed down in post-production. This required meticulous planning and choreography, as the actors had to perform their fight sequences with precision, knowing that their movements would be stretched and accentuated for dramatic effect. The slow-motion shots became an iconic part of the film, with the dramatic moments of impact, blood splatter, and heroic poses, making each fight feel like an artistic, almost mythical moment. Filming the epic battle scenes was one of the most challenging aspects of 300. The battle at the Mop, where the Spartans face off against the enormous Persian army, was a central part of the story, and it had to feel both authentic and breathtaking. The film's large-scale battles were shot with a combination of practical effects, stunt work, and digital effects. While the cast performed many of their own stunts, there were still a lot of special effects involved in making the massive armies and epic battles come to life. Hundreds of extras were used in some of the battle sequences, and green screens were employed to make the large-scale battles feel even bigger. The result is a film that has a heightened, almost dreamlike quality to it, where each action scene feels as though it's playing out in an exaggerated, larger-than-life world. Despite the challenges, the crew remained focused on bringing Snyder's vision to life. The film's production designer, James Bissell, worked closely with the director to ensure that the visual effects complemented the film's gritty, realistic tone. Bissell designed these sets in a way that would allow the actors to move fluidly through the space while still giving the film the grand stylized look that Snyder wanted. In addition, Bissell worked with the costume department to create the iconic Spartan armor, which became a defining visual element of the film. The armor was designed to look both historically accurate and visually striking, with its bold lines and gleaming metal surfaces. The post-production process for 300 was equally demanding. The film's visual effects team worked tirelessly to create the stunning battle sequences, grand landscapes, and dramatic settings that would make the film feel larger than life. In addition to the digital effects, the team also used a unique color grading technique to give the film its signature look. The desaturated color palette, combined with the use of deep shadows and highlights, added to the gritty, high-contrast feel of the film. This was done to give the film a more stylized, graphic novel-inspired look, while still maintaining a sense of realism. The color grading was an essential part of the film's visual identity, and it helped to make the film feel both timeless and fresh. Throughout the production of 300, there was a constant sense of collaboration among the cast and crew. Everyone involved, from the director to the actors to the special effects team, was working toward a common goal to create a film that would captivate audiences and transport them into the world of the Spartans. The reining to green screen work to managing large-scale battle sequences were not easy, but they were overcome through determination, creativity, and a shared passion for the story. In the end, 300 was a film that relied on the strength of its actors, the vision of its director, and the creativity of its production team. The behind-the-scenes stories of how the film came to life are just as epic as the story on screen, showcasing the dedication and ingenuity that went into creating one of the most visually striking films of its time. The themes and symbolism in 300 are intricately woven into the fabric of the film, each serving to enhance the story and deepen the emotional impact. Zack Snyder's adaptation of Frank Miller's graphic novel brings forth a narrative that is not only about war and heroism, but also about the values that shape civilization. The power of unity and the idea of sacrifice through the battles and the character struggles. The film presents profound themes that resonate with the audience on multiple levels. The first major theme explored in 300 is the concept of freedom. The film portrays the Spartans as warriors who are fighting not only to defend their land, but also to protect the very idea of freedom from the encroaching Persian Empire. This theme is established early on with King Leonidas, the leader of the Spartans, who boldly declares that he will not bow down to the Persian king Xerxes. His refusal to submit to tyranny is the driving force behind the battle that unfolds at them. In many ways, Leonidas' defiance is symbolic of the larger fight for freedom throughout history, whether it's freedom from oppression, the freedom to choose one's own destiny, or the freedom to live according to one's values. One of the most striking aspects of this theme is the idea of sacrifice. The Spartans know that they are vastly outnumbered, and yet they march forward into battle fully, aware that they will likely perish in the process. The film underscores the notion that true freedom requires great sacrifice, sometimes at the cost of life itself. Leonidas in particular embodies this ideal as a leader. He's willing to die for the freedom of his peoples, setting a powerful example for his soldiers. This willingness to sacrifice one's life for a greater cause is deeply symbolic of the values of honor, duty, and bravery that are integral to Spartan society alongside freedom. Another prominent theme in 300 is the idea of unity. The Spartans are depicted as a close-knit brotherhood, bound by a common purpose and an unbreakable bond of loyalty. They fight not for personal glory but for the greater good of their people, and their success is rooted in their ability to work together as a unified force. This unity is contrasted with the Persian Empire, which is portrayed as a sprawling, disjointed force led by a tyrannical king who seeks to impose his one others the battle at. The Mopis are presentation of the power that unity can bring. Even when facing overwhelming odds, the Spartans may be fewer in number, but their strength lies in their ability to fight. The symbolism of unity is also evident in the way the Spartans are portrayed as a well-oiled machine. Every man from the youngest soldier to the experienced warriors plays a vital role in the battle. Their strength and precision come not from individual power, but from their collective effort. This is emphasized in the choreography of the battle scenes, where the Spartans fight in tight formation, each soldier relying on his brothers to protect him and keep the formation intact. The film uses this visual style to communicate the message that the Spartans are a single entity, one mind, one purpose, one unbreakable will. Well, the opposite is true of the Persian forces, whose armies are shown as chaotic and not fragmented, with little to no cohesion among the soldiers. Another key theme in 300 is the concept of leadership. Leonidas is not only a warrior, but also a leader who must inspire his men to follow him into a fight that seems impossible to win. Throughout the film, his leadership is tested in various ways, whether it's dealing with internal dissent, facing overwhelming opposition, or making difficult decisions that will ultimately determine the fate of his people. What sets Leonidas apart from other leaders is his ability to lead by example. He does not ask his men to do anything that he is not willing to do himself. This theme of leadership is reinforced by the way Leonidas leads from the front, fighting alongside his soldiers in the thick of battle. He embodies the ideal of the heroic leader who inspires loyalty and respect, not through words alone, but through actions. This theme of leadership is also explored through the character of Queen Gorgo. While Leonidas is away at war, Gorgo takes on a leadership role in Sparta, making difficult decisions to support her husband's cause. She uses her influence to sway the Spartan council and ensure that Leonidas' vision is not lost. Goro's character serves as a reminder that leadership is not confined to the battlefield. It also requires wisdom, diplomacy, and the courage to make decisions in the face of adversity. The film also delves into the theme of destiny. The Spartans are portrayed as men who believe in their fate. Whether it is to die in battle or to achieve eternal glory, they see death as an inevitable part of life and are not afraid to face it. Leonidas, in particular, seems to understand that his destiny is tied to the defense of Sparta, and he embraces this fate with determination. This theme is symbolized by the Spartan shield, which represents both the warrior's individual strength and the collective strength of the people. The shield is not just a weapon, but a symbol of the warrior's duty to protect his land and his people. Throughout the film, the Spartans are seen holding their shields with pride, and this becomes a powerful visual metaphor for their acceptance of their destiny. The symbolism of destiny is also explored in the character of Xerxes, the Persian king who seeks to conquer Greece. Xerxes believes himself to be a god, and his view of destiny is tied to his belief in his own divinity. He sees himself as the chosen ruler of the world, and his desire for power is limitless. This sense of divine destiny is contrasted with the Spartan belief in self-determination. The theme of sacrifice also plays a central role in the symbolism of the film. The Spartans' willingness to sacrifice their lives for their country and their people is a powerful symbol of their commitment to the values of honor, duty, and loyalty. The film emphasizes that true heroism is not about personal glory, but about making sacrifices for the greater good. This is most evident in the final moments of the film when Leonidas and his warriors face certain death. They know that their deaths will inspire future generations to fight for freedom, and they are willing to make that ultimate sacrifice for their cause. The film's final shot, in which a lone warrior stands atop a pile of fallen enemies, symbolizes the enduring power of sacrifice and the legacy of the Spartan war warriors. In conclusion, 300 is a film rich with themes and symbolism that explore the nature of heroism, freedom, unity, and sacrifice. Through the portrayal of King Leonidas and his warriors, the film delves into the idea that true strength comes not from individual power, but from working together for a common cause. The Spartans' willingness to sacrifice everything for the freedom of their people is a timeless message that resonates with audiences on a deep emotional level. The symbolism of the shield, the themes of destiny and leadership, and the contrast between the Spartans' noble cause and Xerxes' thirst for power all contribute to the film's enduring impact. 300 is not just a story about war, it is a meditation on the values that shape civilization and the power of the human spirit to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. The filmmaking techniques used in 300 2006 are integral to its unique style, mood, and overall impact on the audience. Directors Zack Snyder's vision, combined with the technical brilliance of his team, created a cinematic experience that resonated with audiences worldwide. From the innovative use of visual effects to the carefully crafted sound design and camera work, 300 is a masterclass in how filmmaking techniques can enhance a story. At the core of the film's success lies its visual aesthetic, which was largely influenced by the graphic novel by Frank Miller and Lynn Snyder's decision to adapt Miller's work into a film was driven by the idea of capturing the same artistic, almost hyper-stylized visual narrative. The film's look is not just a product of its source material, but also a result of a meticulous blending of practical effects, digital wizardry, and stylistic choices that make it visually unforgettable. One of the most iconic aspects of 300 is its distinctive visual style, achieved through the use of a technique called digital backlit, rather than filming on location in expansive natural environments. Most of the scenes in 300 were filmed against a green screen. This allowed the filmmakers to create a completely controlled environment and digitally manipulate the background and visual elements. The result is a heightened, almost surreal look that adds to the epic nature of the story. The battle scenes in particular feel larger than life because of this digital enhancement and the stark contrast between the actors in you. The foreground and the backgrounds makes the world of Sparta seem more like a graphic novel come to life than a traditional historical setting. The film's visual style is defined by its heavy use of contrast with bright saturated colors against dark shadowy backgrounds. This use of contrast, along with a heavy emphasis on silhouettes and sharp lines, further enhances the graphic novel. Inspired aesthetic, the stylized violence in which blood is depicted in exaggerated splashes and sprays adds to the intensity of the action sequences. This visual exaggeration allows the audience to experience the battle scenes on an emotional level, as the violence feels almost symbolic rather than realistic. The cinematography in 300 is another key element that helps establish the film's tone. The camera work is dynamic, with sweeping shots of vast landscapes and intimate close-ups of characters' faces. The framing often mirrors the composition of the graphic novel panels with sharp angles and bold lines that create a sense of movement and energy. The camera moves with fluidity during the battle sequences, capturing the relentless action and the chaotic brutality of war. In quieter, more emotional moments, the camera slows down, focusing on the characters' expressions and highlighting their inner turmoil. This balance between dynamic action and intimate character moments is essential in maintaining the emotional depth of the film. The use of slow motion is perhaps the most signature element of 300's visual language throughout the film. Snyder employs slow motion shots to emphasize key moments in battle, often highlighting the brutal violence and the heat. Warriors' physical prowess. This technique is used to exaggerate the impact of a blow or the drama of a moment making each action feel monumental. The slow motion sequences also serve to heighten the sense of tension and anticipation, allowing the viewer to fully absorb the weight of each action. In many ways, the slow motion shots mimic the feel of a comic book, where each panel holds significance and allows the audience to linger on the action. The slow motion shots are also accompanied by a carefully crafted sound design that enhances the intensity of these moments. The sound in 300 is visceral, from the metallic clash of swords to the sounds of armor rattling. The use of exaggerated sound effects, combined with the slow-motion visuals, creates a heightened sensory experience for the audience. The battle sequences are made even more intense by the way the sound is layered with the shrieks of soldiers, the sound of arrows whizzing through the air, and the deafening thud of bodies hitting the ground, all contributing to the overall feeling of chaos and violence. And another key film technique used in 300 is its editing. The film employs quick cuts and rapid transitions between scenes to create a sense of urgency and chaos, particularly during the battle sequences. The rapid-fire editing is juxtaposed with moments of calm, where the pace slows down and the film lingers. On quieter, more emotional scenes, this combination of fast and slow pacing keeps the audience on the edge of their seats, constantly shifting between moments of intense action and more intimate character moments. The editing also helps to amplify the epic nature of the film, with the quick cuts during a battle conveying the scale and grandeur of the conflict. The film's color palette plays a crucial role in setting the tone for the entire movie. The use of warm oranges and reds in the desert and battlefield scenes contrasts sharply with the colder blues and grays of the Persian forces. This contrast visually reinforces the thematic division between the Spartans, who fight for freedom and honor, and the Persians, who are depicted as an overwhelming force. The visual division between these two sides is further underscored by the costumes and armor, which are bold and distinct, further contributing to the feeling of good versus evil that runs throughout the film. On top of these visual techniques, the film's sound design also plays a major role in its success. The score, composed by Tyler Bates, is one of the defining elements of the movie. The music is intense, tribal, and atmospheric, amplifying the emotional and dramatic moments throughout the film. The score blends heavy percussion with electronic elements, creating a sound that feels both ancient and modern. The music is used strategically to build tension during battle scenes and to provide an emotional undercurrent during the film's quieter moments. The combination of music and sound effects adds to the intensity of the action, making each clash of swords or cry of battle feel monumental. Another important aspect of the film's sound design is the use of silence during the most emotional or dramatic moments the sound drops out, leaving only the characters' voices or the ambient noise of the environment. This technique is used to heighten the emotional weight of certain scenes, allowing the viewer to focus on the characters and their internal struggles. The most prominent example of this technique comes during the death of King Leonidas, where the silence that accompanies his final moments serves to underscore the significance of his sacrifice in terms of box office performance. 300 was an enormous success, far exceeding expectations, produced on a relatively modest budget of $65 million. The film went on to gross over $450 million worldwide, making it one of the most successful R-rated films of all time. Its success can be attributed not only to its unique visual style and intense action, but also to its universal themes of heroism, sacrifice, and freedom, which resonated with audiences across the globe. The film's success also helped cement Zack Snyder's reputation as a visionary director, and it played a major role in the rise of comic book adaptations in Hollywood. The film's financial success also sparked interest in a sequel, 300: Rise of an Empire, 2014, which continued the story of the Spartans' fight against the Persian Empire. While the sequel was not as successful as the original, it demonstrated the lasting impact that 300 had on the pop culture landscape. The filmmaking techniques in 300 are central to its success, creating a visually stunning and emotionally charged experience for viewers, from the stylized visual effects and dynamic cinematography to the intense sound design and editing. Every aspect of the film's production is carefully crafted to enhance the viewer's experience. These techniques, combined with the film's powerful themes and memorable characters, have ensured that 300 remains a beloved and influential film in the action genre. In conclusion, 300 stands as a prime example of how innovative filmmaking techniques can elevate a film and make it a cultural phenomenon. Its groundbreaking visual style, combined with its dynamic use of sound editing and camera work, created a cinematic experience that captured the audience's attention and left a lasting impression. With its epic scale, intense action, and powerful themes, 300 became a defining film of the 2000s and remains an iconic example of modern filmmaking at its best. In examining 300, 2006, one cannot overlook the profound impact its cast and their performances had on the film's success. The story of the Spartan warriors led by King Leonidas needed a strong ensemble cast to bring these historical characters to life with the intensity and gravitas required for such a monumental tale. From the fierce loyalty of the Spartans to the treacherous ambition of their enemies, the film's performances were integral in creating a story that resonated on an emotional level. Alongside these performances, the film's interviews with cast members and the reviews from audiences only further cemented 300 as a lasting and unforgettable cinematic achievement. At the heart of 300 was Gerard Butler, who played the iconic role of King Leonidas, a character whose determination, strength, and leadership are central to the film's narrative. Butler, a Scottish actor who had previously been known for a variety of roles in different genres, truly broke into mainstream recognition with his portrayal of Leonidas. His performance as the fearless Spartan king became the defining element of the film. From the moment the audience meets Leonidas, Butler's commanding presence and deep understanding of the character's motivations shine through. He's a king willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of his people's freedom, and Butler embodies the role with raw emotion, determination, and a burning sense of justice. In interviews following the release of the film, Butler spoke about the physical and mental preparation that went into portraying such a legendary character. He trained extensively to get into Spartan shape, putting countless hours at the gym to develop a physique that matched the warrior king he was playing. But as Butler emphasized, his transformation was not just about looking the part, it was about embodying the warrior spirit of Leonidas. The actor delved into the psychology of his character, reflecting on the immense weight of leadership, the responsibility of being a king, and the undying loyalty to the Spartan code of honor in his interviews. Butler also revealed that the role demanded an almost obsessive commitment to the character. He worked closely with director Zack Snyder to make sure that every action, every line of dialogue was a testament to Leonidas' indomitable will. His portrayal was praised by critics. And some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.